What's going on, good people? What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody is doing well. Pardon my voice. Voice been a little bit shaky in the recent couple days, but trying to get it right. Trying to get it right. Let me make sure the audio is right. What's going on, everybody, man? We have a couple things to discuss, of course. Obviously, we're going to talk about the fights that happened this past weekend. And definitely going to get everybody's perspective and everybody's viewpoint on it as we go through the show. For those that will join in and for those who will watch the replay, man, I appreciate each of you that take the time to tune in. Whether you got 5 minutes, whether you got 10 minutes, whether you got 2 minutes, I really, really appreciate the time. As always, much love to everybody. Quick shout out, man, to all of the members. I appreciate each of you. Martin, Lights Out, Jay Dab, Tyrone the Great, Henry Siegel, Alley Point TV, TJ. I appreciate all of you, man. Let's see. Last week, got a lot of people messaging me, DMing me. This week, we'll just get it going and start it with the show rather than closing out with the show, man. I didn't forget about it. But last week's show, ran a little longer, but I enjoyed every bit of it. But let's start here, man. Let's start with the quote of the week before we talk about the fights. Quote of the week: the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones, man. What this makes me think of is just remembering to take things one day at a time, move things one object at a time. And when you look too far ahead, when you focus on all of the things that you have to do, you forget that the best way to get there is by taking control of what is in front of you, man, taking that next step up. I always say when you're standing at the bottom of a mountain and you're looking up at the mountain, it can be overwhelming. You may think, I'm never going to reach this mountaintop, man. It's going to take forever. But if you just focus on the steps that you got to take and keep taking it one step at a time and not necessarily focusing on the top of the mountain, but focusing on those steps, no matter how big, no matter how small, as long as you're stepping in front of each day, taking it one day at a time, you might look up and say, wait a minute, I'm actually a lot closer to the top of this mountain than I actually think. So this is what this quote makes me think of, man. You cannot think about Friday and what the great things have in Friday, but you got to take care of Monday. You got to take care of Tuesday. You got to take care of Wednesday in order to get to Friday. So this is what it makes me think of. I'm going to say it again as we get into the fights, man. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones, one day at a time, one thought at a time, one movement at a time. And trust me, you will make progress and be a little bit closer to where you want to be. Let us get the show rolling. Let's see who's up here, man. The Peter, man, you starting off early. Yeah, I'm assuming you did say Lomachenko. I know who you're talking about. Ben, what's going on, my man? Good to see you. I'm always grateful, my brother. I can't complain, man. I hope you are doing well, Ben. I appreciate your time. My man Pablo, what's going on, big dog? Good to see you. Good to see you, man. My brother Francisco, what's going on, my brother, man? Always good to see you. Big Chris over in the UK, what's going on, my man? Loma's masterclass executed as expected. Beautiful, beautiful performance. And, that's where we're going to start. Man, this was the old Loma that we are accustomed to seeing, right? The one that we're used to. And Loma always shows us a little bit of himself in every fight, but sometimes he shows that later in the fight, in the second half of the fight. But from start to jump, man, from start to finish, I mean, Loma looked excellent, man. The angle changes that we're used to, him being patient. I thought George Kambosos did a pretty good job in the early part of the fight, maybe the first 1 to 3 rounds, of actually doing what Devin Haney was doing and trying to hit the body of Lomachenko. You could see he was trying to take some of that game plan, but Devin Haney came back to it and was consistent with it. And Lomachenko, he had success with it, but then he just seemed like he didn't really know what to do, man. He was overwhelmed. And what the interesting stat was, for me, even going up to the fight, was how they said George Kambosos threw like 10 punches per round. Like, I knew it was kind of low, but not that low, man. And it just was not George Kambosos' night, man. But to be fair, it really hasn't really been his night in the past couple fights. He hasn't really looked too great in the past couple fights. And this was a performance that I felt like Loma needed to put himself back into the mix, because if Loma would have lost this fight, man, it wouldn't have looked good. It wouldn't have been a good situation. But I've said it before, for me, it's not so much how a fighter wins speaks so much more volume. And to see Loma put on the spectacular performance that he did, many of us thought Lomachenko was going to win the fight. I didn't think he was going to be able to stop him. Not that it was out of the question, but I just felt like, Loma at 135 doesn't really seem to carry that same power to me. But man, the body work and the beautiful shot that he did, man, it was just good to see Loma turn back the hands of time a little bit and dominate a fight from start to finish. And he looked excellent. But, in the interview as well, too, before we go to the comments, man, Loma's, his face wasn't too clean up, man. He got touched up a little bit from the post-fight interviews. But, and you guys let me know your thoughts on this, man. Was it me, or did Loma, he was saying, man, this is from my dad, the belt from my dad. Sometimes talks like that make me think, wait a minute, like, is he thinking about retirement? It just kind of seemed like that to me. I don't know what's going to happen, but it just seemed like he was, and we're obviously not in his mind, but it kind of seemed like, man, maybe we're not going to see too much of Loma, right? Maybe he wants to end on this note here, right? So that's my thoughts on it. Before we talk about what's next for both men, let's see what you guys got in the comments here, man. Loma showing why he's still pound for pound great, a dominant, skilled performance as expected. Absolutely. Kambosos was there for Loma to look good. Man, Loma is not Loma, George Kambosos, man, split decision man. You know what I'm saying? And I said in the breakdown video, it as much as George Kambosos was trying to get away from this title, he's going to be there now, right? In the sense of, did he just have a great night? But even if that's the case, man, he cashed in on that great night when he beat Teofimo Lopez, right? Man, and as I said, 9 times out of 10, Teofimo Lopez beats him. But on the night, man, George Kambosos, did what he needed to do to get the win. And Kambosos has not really gotten a unanimous decision victory in a while. It's been split decision, majority decision, and even though he beat Maxie Hughes, well, even though he beat Max Hughes on paper, we all knew that he didn't win that fight. I never rated Kambosos. Man, I hear that, man. I hear that. Loma looked great. Hard to see him losing when he fights like that. Absolutely. I cashed in on Loma versus George K. The fight not going the distance at 200. Loma by KO. Oh, man, you was having a nice little weekend, my man. Loma versus Navarrete. Dennis winner in October, then face other champs at 135. I know he was talking about he wanted, not going to say wanted to, but when Tank's name was mentioned, there's been a lot of talks in the boxing space about that being a possibility as well too. But yeah, I don't know if that would be the greatest fight for Loma. Ever since I saw the Maxi's performance, I knew Kambosos was getting stopped in his next fight. It was, man, Kambosos is a tough cat, man. I'm gonna gotta give him that. But definitely was not a performance that he wants, man. And hopefully, you don't want, well, now he's in this gatekeeper position. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be a gatekeeper for the younger guys. But we're going to talk about who he should fight next. Pedro Cava, a very good win. Absolutely. Maloney is such a sore loser, man. He looked very agitated, very frustrated. So do you believe Tank really wants to fight Loma now? Tank had chances years ago to face Loma and avoided the fight. I don't know, man. Tank mentioned so many people. I don't even know. It would probably, I would, it would make sense in the sense that Loma is a name that a lot of people are very high on, and if Tank can go in and stop Loma, Loma hasn't been stopped before, and if Tank can do it, it would make things interesting. Is it the best fight? I mean, I don't know. I don't. If I was Loma, I wouldn't fight Tank. I'd go a different route. Loma has no passion for boxing, borderline retirement. I mean, he's been in the sport for a while, man. All this stuff added up. So I wouldn't be mad if he does retire. But obviously we'll see. This would be a good time for him to walk away. Man, very few athletes, especially fighters, are able to retire on their own terms. So if Loma does walk away, I mean, hey, he had a great career and he ended his career a champion, if that is the route that he's going to take. But when you're looking at the post-fight interview and hearing him talk about certain things, I'm just like, man, it doesn't really seem like he wants more. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Congratulations to Lomachenko for beating up flat-footed, feather-fisted heavy bag. George Kambosos was paid to lose. Well, he was definitely paid, but he definitely tried his best, man. Loma versus Shakur. Oh, yeah, that would be interesting. that would be interesting. George K was paid to lose. Oh man. So let's move it on, man. Who do we think Loma should fight next? Who do you think Loma should be in the ring next? Who would you like to see? And what do you think is next for George Kambosos Jr.? As we get into it, before I hear you guys' thoughts, man, I have pulled up the rankings again here, right? So we have the champions in the division. We have Gervonta Tank Davis, WBA champ, Shakur Stevenson, WBC champ, Loma, IBF. And so when we look at all of this, I believe William Zepeda is like mandatory for all of them. I think he's number one for all of them. Does Loma take that fight? I'm not sure if Loma wants that type of pressure in that fight when it comes to stylistic standpoint. Tank is fighting Martin. Maybe Loma takes the winner or the loser of that fight. That could be an interesting fight. Murataya is fighting Tevin Farmer. Maybe the winner of that, that could be an interesting fight. Maybe the winner of Navarrete and Bernachuk, that could be an interesting fight. So it's a lot of different ways how Loma can go about it. I'm sure he's made enough money, but it would be very interesting. Then you talk about George Kambosos Jr. Well, before the fight, they had him at number 7. I'm assuming he would be moved out of number 7, or maybe he drops to like 10. To me, the only fight that I want to see George Kambosos fight next is give Maxie Hughes the rematch, man, because I don't think he beats a lot of these guys, dang near the top guys in the top 10. I don't see him beating Tank, Zepeda, Stevenson, Frank Martin, Murataya. I don't even see him beating Keyshawn Davis, right? And I think Bernachuk beats him as well too. So Kambosos, man, it would not be bad if he took a rematch fight to fight Maxie Hughes, and you can have that in Australia too, and maybe that's your last fight. So it's an interesting thing when we talk about what's next. Oh man, Kambosos. There's another guy too that just came to mind, but it's slipping me. That's it. Jojo Diaz was the guy that I was thinking about because both of those guys need to redeem themselves in many forms, man. But at this point, like Kambosos might lose that one too. Most of the boxing community had Loma beating Haney. Oh man, a bunch of people had that happening. And a lot of people were saying that was going to be a boring fight as well too, but that was an exciting fight, man. That fight was very high skilled fight. Loma versus Tank, or Shakur and Kambosos versus Maxie Hughes. Loma versus Tank, I'd love to see it. Shakur Kambosos, I don't know if I want to see Shakur Kambosos, bro. I think that might be a tough one. Shakur Max Hughes would be a good fight, an interesting fight. George K will retire. I mean, I've heard him say that before, but we'll see. But regardless of that, man, he has done a great job of making a lot of money off of one fight. Like he did exactly from a business standpoint. Like the man did a great job. Man did a great job from a business standpoint. Turned one night into some pretty big paydays. Even though he didn't come out on the other side. But it's going to be interesting, man. Kambosos is a bum. He got lucky against Teo. That's about it. I think he should go back to Britain and stick to fighting journeyman. Oh, man, Blitz. That's how you feel, bro? That's how you feel? I don't think it'll be the same. Hughes, he got stopped by Zepeda, had nothing for him, but styles make fights, and Hughes' style clearly favors him versus George. And that is why I think it would be a good rematch, right? Because Zepeda unloaded on Maxie Hughes. And if Maxie Hughes is weakened up a little bit, maybe a little less confident, then that would be great for George Kambosos to come in and find a way to get it done, right? It would make it more of a convincing win. And it would be a great opportunity for him for another payday, right? You put that down in Australia or over in the UK, it would do all right. It would do all right. It would do all right. The main event between Lone versus okay started around 12 p.m. Australia time. Oh, bro, don't get me started about the time, bro. Like, man, I like fell asleep. I missed the first like two, 3 fights. So I had to go back and watch some stuff the next day. It was like 1:30 here on the Eastern time when that fight was going on, man. Sure, I was trying to stay awake. I should have got up and done some push-ups or something, but that was mad late, man. Lenny, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Looking forward to Tim versus Ortiz, picking Ortiz. That's a big step up fight for Ortiz, but with that power that he has, man, you can't count him out, man. So let's keep it pushing. Before we go on to some of the fights that's happening this week, we have a lot of different fights. Man, Andrew Maloney retires. That was very, very interesting to me because, he's frustrated, very annoyed because he felt like he won the fight, man. But growing up for me, man, I was always taught never make a decision based on just emotion. And he looked very emotional in this fight, man. And so it was just interesting to see that he picked right then and there to retire. He should have just calmed down a little bit, gather your thoughts, and then make that decision. So it was an interesting night in Australia, man. Nino Hughes and Sharonica Johnson, the controversy and the recall with Dan Hennessy. You know how mad anybody would have been, bro. Like, I felt so bad for Nino Hughes. I felt so bad for her, man, because she felt like she won the fight. Picking her up, they're celebrating, right? And then you have to go back and say, oh, no. And he didn't even say, oh, I made a mistake. He just went back and said, ladies, to the center. And then he just read the card again as if nothing happened. You know what it reminded me of? You remember Miss Universe when Steve Harvey made that mistake and he said the winner is, and at least during that Steve Harvey said, oh no, wait a minute, I done got the cards mixed up, here's the actual winner. It reminded me of that. Lieutenant Dan Hennessy, man, it'll probably be a long night for you, bro. Well, a long morning, long day over in the UK, but that was embarrassing, bro. That was embarrassing, man. What you guys think about it, man? Did you all see anything like that ever before? Right? Did you all see anything like that before? But yeah, that was crazy. That was a crazy turn of events, man. Andrew Maloney got robbed. Maloney clearly lost the fight in my eyes. Needs to stop being crybaby, but others will have their opinions on who won. Maloney lost fair and square. I placed a little money on Gofera. Man, you were having a nice weekend on the betting side, brother. What do you think comes out between Usyk and Fury this Saturday? Man, I have this fight card uploading right now as we speak. Hopefully when we finish this, it'll be up and we talk about all of the fights, man. This is going to be a very interesting fight, man. We're going to be talking about that next, right? So just hold this thought for me. Come back. I'm going to get back to it. Hughes was robbed, in my opinion. She was the more aggressor. Man, that was that fight, bro, that I was kind of, sleeping in and out, man. So I got to go back and rewatch the fight. Chris, it was a close fight, but I thought Maloney edged it though. ESPN broadcast kept giving Maloney screen time of him whining. You know how things are in the media space, bro. You got to go ahead and get that stuff going. Are you going to bet on Usyk? Oh, Lenny gonna drop a little bit. Yeah, that's fair, Bliss. I just don't like Maloney saying he's done straight away. Maloney said it was corruption, because Cabrera is popular in the boxing world. More popular than Maloney, the home fighter. Like, that's interesting. Never saw an announcer make a mistake like that in boxing. I thought I was having deja vu kind of moment. Very odd, man. I've never seen something like that happen before. That was wild. That was wild. That was wild. Who we got? Hold this thought, brother. Hold this thought. Hold this thought. Hold this thought. Again, just want to get you guys' thoughts on that because I've never seen anything like that before. I would have been tight, man. If I was Mr. Lieutenant Dan Hennessy, man, I wouldn't show my face for the next year. I'm done. I don't need no screen time. I'm done. I'm not doing nothing. I'm in the crib. I'm getting another job. Like, I'm not doing that, bro. Like, I don't I don't have it. I don't have it. Let's keep things moving. Again, not a long show today. But let's keep things moving. Let's keep things moving. So we got a lot of different things happening this week. And obviously, Fury and Usyk was supposed to happen before, and it was rescheduled. And so now we get it this time. And it's actually a really good card on the Fury and Usyk card, man. Lots of good fights. Again, I have this video uploading right now as we speak. And so hopefully it'll be up by the time this is finished. But real quick, what's everybody's thoughts on here? And I'm actually going to open up the next round, the segment next round for round. I'm going to open it up right now. And if anybody wants to jump on and share your thoughts on the weekend, share your thoughts on the fights ahead, then please come on, share your thoughts, get your conversation off, and we'll talk about the fights. Make sure I got it there. Boom. So, where do we want to go here? Right? Where do we want to go here? Wait, let me get back to these comments. Oh, who you got? Caballal versus Sanchez, Cordina versus Kakachi. This was a tough one for me, man. As I was breaking the video down, man, TJ has actually joined me on the breakdown of the video as well, too. So when I was breaking down this one, man, I think this is a 50-50 fight, man. I think you can make more reasons why, you can go for Frank Sanchez, and Frank Sanchez probably boxing his way to a victory here. But Caballal, man, his last performance was excellent, man. He fought a great fight. He fought a great fight. What's going on, my man? You just gotta turn it a little bit. What's going on?
How you doing, bud?
I'm well, man. What's going on with you, man?
Not much. What are you guys talking about? The Fury Usyk or just the whole card?
Man, so we're going to talk about if you have any thoughts on Lomachenko, Kambosos, anything that we talked about before, but we're going to talk about the fights this weekend, man. Fury, Usyk, Navarrete, whatever is on your thoughts, man. Let me get what your thoughts on, man.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the card this weekend. I'm just I've been a huge fan of Frank Sanchez for a while, and I just commented saying, like, I think he's free money. He's only a 2-1 favorite against that Agate Carbajal guy. And Carbajal looked great in his last fight, but it was against a completely different fighter with absolutely no speed or footwork. And that's something that Sanchez strives on. I think this is the fight that'll get Sanchez a big fight after this.
Man, let me ask you this. Let's talk about Usyk and Fury real quick, just to get your thoughts on it. Who do you think benefits more from the layoff? Right, because this fight was rescheduled. Do you think it benefits Fury a little bit more, or do you think Usyk is still coming in with the same confidence, same belief? Because sometimes it's hard when a fight is rescheduled, when you get the energy up for it and you're excited for it, and then you kind of get flatlined for a couple months, and you're just like, man, did I? How do I retrain myself with the excitement again? Do you think this hurts anybody? What do you think?
I actually don't have an opinion on really who it hurts. I mean, I'd like to say it favors Usyk more just because he seems to be more right in the head and he can handle the layoff a little bit better than Fury. Fury has distractions all over the place, and it's going to be hard for him to get himself up again. I think a guy like Usyk is just always ready. He's very
Yeah.
professional, so it might benefit Usyk a little more, but I don't take much into it.
Yeah, I think I think when you fight a guy like Tyson Fury, man, you gotta get ready for all of the things leading up to that fight. Tyson Fury is gonna call you a dosser, whatever that means, and all these different things every single time. And I think, you know, on the Usyk side of things, man, it's very hard from a sparring standpoint to find someone who's a giant like a Tyson Fury. When are you really gonna find a sparring partner who's 6'9", who's nimble on his feet, who you're never really sure which version of him is going to show up on the night. But from the pictures that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen it too, he looks like he's taking it seriously. He looks in shape. So, how do you think this one plays out for you, man?
To be honest, I've always said if this was a pre-Klitschko Fury, I think Fury just walks through him because my thing with Fury was always he's one of the best heavyweights I've ever seen because of his foot movement before the Klitschko fight. Since then, he took the 2 years off and everything. He's been so much more flat-footed, and I just don't like that. I think a guy like Usyk can just outpoint him. Fury's going to try and lay on him and all stuff like that. But I think it's just going to be whoever lands 2, 3 solid punches around is probably going to win the round. I just think it's going to be a boring fight that Usyk can come through in the end and win. But just because Fury, I just don't think his footwork's there anymore. It's just something he hasn't had in the last 6, 7 years. And if he had that, I think he would beat Usyk easily, but he doesn't have it. So I'm just leaning Usyk, but it's so tough to call. This is going to be one of those fights where when it gets over, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's what we thought was going to happen. Just like the Tyson Jake Paul fight, it's going to be whatever happens, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, that's what should have happened. But it's so hard to call. But my lean is Usyk, just in and out, in and out. And hopefully he doesn't get tired with Fury leaning on him. But that's not going to look good in the judges' eyes either if he just jabs, leans. Eventually, I think Usyk will just, like I said, land 2, 3 clean shots around, and I think that'll be enough to win him 7 rounds.
Yeah. Man, before I share a little bit of my thoughts on that, man, let me get to these comments, man. Chris says John Fury always makes it about himself. Yeah, man. He was headbutting this dude. And I also just think, like, yeah, I just think, man, like, he comes from that gypsy fighting type of style, bare knuckle. Like, I don't think he knows anything different. like, I think that's just who he is. He's a guy that when his son's fighting, he feels like he has to raise the animosity in the room and he has to make a statement. I just think that's who he is, man. And it's part of it. Like, and as Fury's dad, as Fury's son, he's got to respect it. He's got love for his dad, right? And so it's a tough, you could say it's mental warfare, whatever you want to say about that, but it's a wild time, man. I seen Kakashi live in May last year. Yeah, he's actually pretty good. He's actually pretty good. John Fury is a legend. I appreciate his sense of humor, keeps the sport of boxing entertaining. Fury is garnering more fans as we speak. Salute to him. Big step up for Cuban Flash. Ajit Caballal looked spectacular against Makhmadov. I actually liked how well Caballal boxed. I thought he showed a little bit more to his skill set in that fight than we've seen him before. Makhmadov, man, he's very, he's got power, but if you can get past that, he doesn't move. He's there to get hit.
Got a fight coming up too. It might be this weekend against Junior Fa, I believe.
I mean, I thought he retired. No, I thought somebody
Mahmuda,
like that retired. Junior
Mahmuda.
Fa.
Oh no, I think he's fighting Junior Fa coming up because I
Okay.
bet every weekend, and I think he's like a 12-1 favorite over Junior Fa. I could be wrong on the name, but he's definitely got a fight coming up within next week or so.
Yeah, well, he definitely needs that rematch.
He-
he needs that win. Yeah, but headbutting someone isn't on. Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't like all that stuff either, man. I think it's more of a step up for Cabial. Absolutely. I think it's a great fight for both of those men. And Sanchez's win over Fa Ajagba looks pretty good right now, man. And I think Ajagba has improved quite a bit. He's been looking pretty good. So
I was at his
obviously,
fight against Brian Shaw, where he exposed Brian Shaw, the undefeated American, and he looked great in that fight. The guy's got a jab now. He's got the Olympic background. I like Ajagba.
man, did Shaw look like he looked tired on screen, but did he look tired to you? Like
He looked
live?
he looked horrible. He wasn't throwing or anything. He looked terrible. He just didn't show up that night.
How heavy do we think Tyson comes in? Oh man, what do you think, bro? What do you think? What do you think?
I don't know, but that's another factor in itself. I mean, I don't know his exact weights for the last couple of fights, but I'm assuming it's going to be a little lighter because against Wilder, I think he was putting on weight maybe to get some more punch resistance. You don't have to do
hmm
that against a guy like Usyk. I know he's going to try and tire him out, but he's big enough anyways. I think he should come in a little lighter against Usyk than he did against guys like Wilder or Dillian White.
I think he definitely comes in lighter, man. He's looked much leaner, for me, heavyweights comes in all different sizes and shapes, man. All boxers do, but when he fought Ngannou, you saw he looked like he just came off the couch, didn't really do too much training. He did not look like he really cared about that fight. And so,
Yeah.
and I'm not a fan of, again, Zhang coming in at 300 pounds. Like, I'm not a fan of that either. Like, it's just not the greatest look. But
No.
I think he comes in, I don't know, I'd say anywhere 260, 270, but a lean 260, 270. Again, like, I think sometimes we forget how massive Tyson Fury is, like 6'9". Like if he comes in like 230 ever, I would be worried. I'd
He's
be
also
worried.
got to be prepared to go 12 rounds in this fight. Like maybe against
Exactly.
Wilder and Dillian White, like he's not expecting to go 12 rounds, so you can come in a little heavier. I don't think he's going to be able to get Usyk out of there, so he's going to have to fight for 12 rounds.
Fury will outlast Usyk, another top-ranked fighter at the pinnacle of victory. I like the confidence, man. I'd say 260 pounds. Fury looks in great shape, lean and mean. I enjoy watching press conference weigh-ins to get a read on fighters. Uh, the Run 77. Hello, appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Tyson Fury is going to brutally knock out Usyk in the later rounds. I even had a dream about this. Well, that's a crazy dream, bro. But if it happens, we're going to come back to this and say, man, that dream was right. Brother Francisco says Apatai versus Britas. Who you guys got? Apatai has a lot of talent and toughness. I got him beating Britas again. Hopefully he fights Zerto after that. What do you think about this one, man? The rematch. How do you think this one goes? Who do you like? What do you think about it?
Yeah. I actually just put in my bet last night for this, and I got Opataya at like minus 650. I don't rate Breedis that high. Not where I think Opataya is like special in that weight class. So I'm just not going to pick him to lose. But I think either a decision or a late stoppage. But I think he beats Breedis again.
Man, we haven't seen Breida since that fight, man. And I see inactivity working two ways, especially as a fighter ages. One, I think sometimes if you're getting a little bit older, the inactivity can actually work with you because you gives you more time to rest, more time to train, your body's fresher. That can work
Mhm.
with you, or it can work against you, as we've seen many times before. You may be rusty, takes you a while to get back into your groove. And in the first fight, Bridas came on strong in the second half of the fight, but early on, Apataya, man, he was dominant early on. And both men came out of that fight with some battle wounds, man. I think Apataya had a broken nose, no, broken jaw. Bridas had a broken nose. Um,
Yeah.
But Apataya, man, the last two fights, he fought, good fighters, and he didn't play with them, right? He came
Hmm.
in, did what he needed to do, dominate the fight, and look great doing it. And I don't even think he's at his peak yet, man. Like, I think he's got so much more.
And that's
And
the
so,
difference. Probably getting towards his peak. Breedis is on the way down. It's just not set up good for Breedis.
and so it's not that I don't think Breedis can win. Obviously, as we know, brother, anything can happen in boxing, but it's hard to make a case that Breedis is gonna get it done. Plus, just haven't seen what he's looked like. I haven't seen no training videos. I don't know if he's chiseled up. I don't know if I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So it's tough, but I think
Plus, in a fight
Apataya.
like that, you also got like Opataya is the A side too. So if it is a close fight, if it is a close
It's gonna go.
decision, you got to side with Opataya to win that. So it's going to be very hard for Breedis to decisively win 7 rounds against him. I don't see it.
I think Abataya stops him the second time around, and I think he makes a statement, man. As far as Zerto, my brother Francisco, man, that would be a good fight, man. But honestly, like, I think Abataya might move up to heavyweight sooner than later. I think there's way more opportunities and bigger paydays for him in the heavyweight division than there is in the cruiserweight division, or I guess the bridgerweight division. But yeah, I think it's a good fight, man. It could play out exactly like how it did last time. Who knows? That's the beauty of the sport, is you never know how it's going to go till we see it. A lot of people will judge Tyson off his scripted fight versus Francis. Fury will bully Usyk. Fury was carrying Ngannou the whole fight. I rewatched the fight multiple times. Fury was intentionally throwing the right hand at Ngannou's chest, not head. My heart is with Usyk. My money,
Yeah.
my money stays in my pocket. I'm not mad at that. Fury was pulling his punches. Francis, not too many people are ready for conversation about scripted fights. Let's talk about a couple of these fights that are happening, man. What do you think about Neverate and Bronchuk, man? How do you think this one goes?
A knockout either way, but I would say Navarrete probably just runs through him. Maybe like a stoppage around probably around 5 or 6 for Navarrete. Just too much pressure.
I think the same thing, man. Neverate coming off a close fight against Robson Conceição. And Navarrete is
I
one of
actually
those
bet
hot and cold
Conceição
fighters.
in that fight. I bet Conceição in that fight. I thought, and I think that's what happens. Going to happen if Navarrete tries to fight Lomachenko. He's gonna fight somebody who's gonna get knocked out and just get out box. And he loses too many rounds against lower level fighters. That when you get up to the top and you can't knock these guys out, he's gonna eventually lose rounds. Just the fighter he's fighting this weekend's not that guy.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the Bronachuk, I think he beats Kambosos too. So
Yeah.
Navarrete he's just hot or cold to me, man. Like, he is so skilled. Like, when he's up there, he's tough to beat. Right, the length, the reach, the unorthodox approach, the power. When he's locked in and dialed in, he's tough to beat. But when he's not dialed in, bro, like, you can be beat on any given night. You just don't know.
A lot of that was also at a lower weight class, though, too. So you don't know
Exactly.
how well the power is going to carry over.
Here's a interesting fight, man. Probably one of the more interesting ones. I'm interested to see how it goes. Is Giovanni Santillan and Brian Norman Jr. Man, what do you think about this one?
I was at Brian Norman Jr.'s last fight. He fought on that F.A. Ajagba versus Brian Shaw undercard. And he looks good, but Santillini looks so good against, who was it, Alexis Rocha that he fought? Where he beat up Alexis Rocha. Yeah, I mean, he looked so good in that fight, and he's very underrated. He's got an excellent record. It's hard to see him losing, but I think Norman could beat him on points eventually. It's just, once again, I don't know if he's going to be able to stop all that pressure from Santillini. Santillini's a very underrated fighter. And I'd probably just go with Santillini, probably by decision or late stoppage.
Man, I was wrestling with this one, bro, because like I wanted to lean Michael Norman. I got this video uploading as well too because I actually like Brian Norman, man. I think he gets a lot of slack. But the man has found a way to win in every fight, biting the no contest win. And when you have not lost a fight before, you don't know how to lose, and you fight with that confidence. Santala, man, going into that Rocha fight, there's been some performances that he's had that's been pretty shaky, right?
I
Some
know.
fights that people thought that he lost the fight. And so for him to come in and put on the performance like how he did against Alexis Rocha, talk about seizing the opportunity in the moment, right? Like that's what you want. That's what you want as a fighter, right? To say, man, yeah, I know I didn't look great here, but I've really been in here working. And that it's hard to ignore that type of performance against Alexis Rocha because that version of him, that beats a lot of these guys in the division, man.
I know. But then you also got to look at it like Rocha's not the same type of fighter as Norman. So yeah, you did it against Rocha, and Rocha's probably better than Norman, but you know how that boxing math, works out, but it's going to be a good fight. That's probably like one of the hardest fights to pick over the weekend. That or the Joe Cordina fight's tough too.
Yeah, like I think that's a 50-50 fight, man. And I think the better man who makes the better adjustments. I've seen both of these guys look shaky. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it's a good fight. I like the matchmaking. I guess we'll see which guy shows up on the night. Let's talk about what you just said, man. Cordina and Anthony Kakachi, man. What do you think about that one?
I'm just going to lean towards Joe Cordina to win a decision just because he's a very cerebral fighter. And I love that about him. They think his name's like the Welsh Wizard, his
Yep.
nickname. But I've been watching him for years. I've just been a big fan of him. But I forget what the other guy's only loss is, but it was a very good loss he's got on his resume.
Liam Dillon.
Who? Somebody lost to Liam Dillon?
I think Kakachi, if I remember correctly, lost to Dillon. Let me double check that right now.
If that's the case, I'd take my point back because I just watched him get smoked over the weekend.
Oh no, sorry, it was Martin Joseph Ward back in 2017. Yeah, okay, not
sorry,
not
it must have been thinking something else. But yeah, regardless, I go with Cordina by decision. He's just too smart in there, and he's got a lot of big things on the horizon. I don't think he'll mess it up.
Man, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Cordina carries this weight. I think he's big for the division, man, and sometimes shrinking yourself down to get there has his problems. But he's been in some really tough fights in the past two fights with Vasquez and Rakimov, and I think Vasquez actually gave him more of a challenge than Rakimov, and I felt like Vasquez, he should have been able to handle him, but he didn't really handle him as well as we kind of thought that he was going to. And I've been big on Cordina since he stepped in the ring to fight Kenichi Ogawa. So, yeah, I like Cordina to win this fight, but he has not looked too great in the recent two fights. He's looked good, but for the title fights and the big fights that he says he wants, especially in this division, he needs to have a really, really excellent performance and not just a good performance.
Are they him versus Ray Ford, I believe, if Ford gets by Ball. And if that's the case, I think Ford will be the one to expose him.
Yeah, I just hope we get to see it, man. I'm tired of 4 belt holders, man. I want to see one champ. I want to see one champ. My man Pablo says the winner of Neverate versus Banchuk WBO lightweight belt will fight Loma. All of them are in Top Rank. That makes a lot of sense. Sal says insight on Sergey Kovalev fight. Man, I forgot who he's fighting.
I never heard of the guy that he's fighting.
Maybe it's a fight for Bone Crusher to look like his old self. Will he? I don't know. I guess we'll see.
I think he looked halfway decent in his last fight. Kovalov did. He fought within the last or so, I think, but he looked halfway decent.
We'll see, like 30, 39, 40 now, something like that.
He's up there. He took that brutal, KO from Canelo. I don't know.
Yeah, never been the same since.
Yeah.
It's all about the money of the day. As far-fetched as this may sound, most high-profile fights are orchestrated. I feel you. I feel you. Don't like Cordina, weakest champion in 130. My man Oshaki would beat him easily. Man, who's Oshaki fighting? I just saw this announced recently. It's slipping my mind.
I don't know. I was gonna say Nova, but he just fought Nova. But I think he might be fighting on the same card as Nova. But yeah, I forget.
Oh, it's slipping me, but I know he's fighting soon. I think he's fighting in Newark, right? Uh, it just came across me. It's not coming to me. It's not coming to me. Oh man. Uh, Richard Torres, man, he's fighting a guy who's supposed to be a little bit better. What do you what do you think about this one, man? How good do you think Richard Torres is?
I love Richard Torres. I'm a big fan of smaller heavyweights just because I love the footwork and the speed. I don't know how well his chin is because it's obviously hasn't been tested, but he's been getting KOs. I know it's probably against, part-time lift drivers, but he gets KOs with his size. So, I mean, I don't think there's much to worry about with Torres. And I think eventually, like, he's with Top Rank. So maybe him versus Jagba in a year or so. But I think he needs 3, 4 fights before he steps up. But he fights pretty often. I love Torres, though. And I don't think he's going to lose to Moore at all. I mean,
No,
he's
man, I don't
probably
think he does.
50-1 favorite in this fight, which is reasonably.
I think for Torres, man, like, look, you can see the talent, you can see the skill. You know he has power, but for me, brother, I just don't know how good he is yet because I feel like we haven't seen enough of him yet because he's been stopping the match. The matchmaking has been absolutely atrocious, and I just want to know how good that. I want to see him in a tough fight, right? I want to see him tested. Because yeah, he can make money knocking out these cats every single day of the week. But when we're talking about becoming a champion and being a player in the division, personally, I like him. I like him a lot, but I don't know how good he is. And I
I
don't.
miss the days when prospects used to fight each other. Like get two guys that are 10-0. Like maybe him and like just to throw a name out there, like Johnny Fisher's a big guy from like the UK that's coming up. Just have those two guys fight right now so we can at least find out what one of them has. It's obviously not going to happen, but like we're never going to know until these guys get tested. But it's going to, like I said with Torres, it's going to take another couple years at least before he gets anybody in the top 15. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Trey Chi says that Newark card is lit. Man, correct me if I'm wrong. We were talking about Oshaki being on that card. He might not. I don't fully remember, but if he is on that card, please let us know. Again, I just dropped the link if anybody wants to come on.
Is he fighting Is
That is
Constancio the
it.
name?
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah, because I was happy for Conceicao because I picked him to beat Navarrete. I actually scored that fight for him. But it's good to see Conceicao, getting another shot. I don't think he'll
Man,
beat Foster, but
he looked excellent in his last fight out too, man. He got himself a nice little stoppage win. You know what I'm saying?
he did. But I think
Stoppage-wise,
I think it was scheduled for 8 rounds for some reason.
yeah,
But
that was strange. That was
yeah,
strange.
but I like him. He looks good. He's got that amateur win over Lomachenko. Like, I like him.
That's
It
aging
was
well.
overturned after the fight, but he technically beat Lomachenko on points in the amateurs. So,
Yeah.
he's pretty legit.
Does Torres Jr. have more potential than Anderson? Torres Jr. did beat Anderson in the amateurs, I believe. What do you think about this one, man?
Man, that's close. Like there's another fight. I'd love to see that. I just think Anderson's a little further on in his career right now. He would probably beat Torres at this stage, but give me that fight in like 2, 3 years. I don't know who I would pick. I would lean towards Anderson. I think Anderson's special. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I love Anderson. That's a tough fight to call, but I would lean Anderson.
Man, I'd love to see this fight as well too, man. I think we have a better body of work to understand what Jared Anderson is like more than we understand what Torres is like because we've seen Jared Anderson tested and been into some fights where he got hit, right, and he had to make adjustments. And so Torres, it's if they fought this weekend, it's hard not to think that Jared Anderson wouldn't win this fight. But at the same time, Torres could come up and rise to the occasion and he comes out on top. But it's kind of that pick your poison type of deal. What do you like better, man? I personally think Jared Anderson might be a little bit more athletic than Richard Torres, maybe a little bit more fundamentally sound, but Torres seems very hungry and determined. And sometimes that can even the playing field when the talent may not be on par. But that's a good fight, man. That's a good fight. If it happens, obviously, I'd love to see it. Appreciate that, man. I appreciate your generosity, man. I really appreciate you, man. Pablo jumped on last week, so I appreciate you, bro. Totally agree with you. It's always nice to watch Robson Conceição. Oshaki, yes. Underrated banger, absolutely. Conceição, one of my favorite boxers. They robbed him versus Valdez. 100%. I thought he beat Valdez as well too. Yeah, I agree. Let me ask you this, man. This wasn't on the agenda for today, but there's always this talk about resumes, right? Always this talk about who this person's fight, who they have in fight. If you had to say, man, and you can even talk about all the divisions, who are some guys that you think have some of the best resumes in the sport today?
I think Canelo's got the best resume in the sport, just because he's done it over a long period of time. And like, there's people that say like, well, he beat Sugar Shane Mosley past his prime. But when you look at the other fighters who they're fighting, Sugar Shane Mosley outside of his prime is still better than a lot of those fighters, in my opinion. So like guys like Irislandi Lara, like nobody knew about him back then, but he's a great fighter. And Canelo has names like that on his resume. So he's kind of just Canelo, you just kind of forget about him. But I think he's got by far the best resume in boxing. And I'm trying to think like if I had to say like I like to think a lot about like who has the best win in all of boxing. And I don't know, because there's some fighters like I love Shakur Stevenson, but he ain't got nobody on his resume. I think the skills are there. So when I do pound for pound, I tend to look at who I think is most skillful. And I think guys like Shakur Stevenson are that skillful. Or Terrence Crawford would probably be the most skillful fighter, but his resume is not that strong. So, I mean, for resume, and Dimitri Bivol is another guy. Like,
resume is not that strong either.
Pretty much everybody else in his division, he beat Canelo. Like, who's got a better win in boxing than Canelo or on the resume? Who's got a better name than that on their resume? Haney too. Haney's got some tough wins.
Yeah, and Loma's got some good wins on his resume as well too. And I know like a lot of people are up in the air about who I'm going to mention next. Like I think Anthony Joshua probably has one of the best resumes in the heavyweight division. Like,
and I know a lot of people in the heavyweight division, in my opinion.
And I know a lot of people think otherwise in that, but man, AJ, he fights cats, man. Like he's going to get in the ring to mix it up. So I think it's just one of those situations where it's like I don't think belts matter anymore. Personally, it's payday, right? Everybody wants the payday.
Against Madrimov, but that really doesn't mean much. It's at the end of the day, when these guys retire, what I'm going to look at is, Canelo has probably like 6 Hall of Famers on his resume. How many is Crawford going to have when he retires? He's going to have 0. It just is what it is. I don't think, you got to be, all-time greats to go down as an all-time great, in my opinion. But the skill is still there for a lot of these fighters. But when you're looking at just resumes, you got to have some Hall of Famers on your resumes if you want to start talking about being an all-time great for some of these guys.
Man, what do you think about the whole Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney situation? what does that, when you look at how that fight played out, what do you think about it, man?
Yeah,
The
I think
Osterine thing, all that different stuff. What do you think about it?
you said it last week on your podcast, just like we can't unsee what we saw. Like we saw
Yeah.
Ryan Garcia pretty much dominate him, but with the PEDs in there, like whenever somebody tests positive for PEDs, like I throw it out the window. I throw that, in my opinion, I throw that whole performance out the window. I just do, just because like PEDs just don't help you in boxing. Like the main thing they help you for is punch resistance. Like there's a lot of guys in UFC, it happens more in MMA. Like you see these guys that get popped for steroids, and then all of a sudden their next fight they have no chin whatsoever, but they were
Mm.
walking through punches before that. And like it just your recovery, the fact that he didn't make weight, all that stuff bothers me. But I've always rated Garcia higher than a lot of people. Like there was people saying he was like a YouTube slash fighter. Like they would put YouTube first before his name. I think he's a great talent. I just think he's a level below an A plus talent, like I thought Haney was. But it's hard for me. I literally just throw that fight right out the window because of the PEDs, and we still got to wait for the B samples to get tested. But for me, I just throw it out the window. But it was definitely unexpected. I saw Haney just being able to box circles around him, and that didn't happen. But
Yeah, I think many of us picked Devin Haney, man. Not that we didn't think Garcia could win the fight, but man, we just didn't know where the heck his head was at. You know what I'm saying? We didn't know what the heck his head was at, and even in that fight, if it wasn't for the knockdowns, man, he would have lost the fight. Right? Hindsight is 2020, of
yeah,
course. But you know, the whole Osterine thing, that B sample is going to come back positive. I'd be very surprised if it does not. Um, Track and field, my background, and boxing, the drugs, the PEDs are very rampart in the sport. And if I'm Ryan Garcia, man, look, that B sample is going to come back positive, man. You need to go and take everything that you were taking and try and build a case that maybe it's a supplement, maybe it was contaminated between something, because the sample is going to come back what the A sample was. That's just what it is, unless someone is literally going in. But those
and then
caps,
he tried to talk about ashwagandha. I've been taking ashwagandha for 3 years every day. I
you
guarantee
and
you,
me
there's
both.
no aspirin in my system.
So he needs to build that case on what else could be contaminated. Is it a supplement? Maybe you're taking protein. Like take that route, because right now, man, he's just looking a little bit crazy, man. Colorado Combat, man, thank you for that, man. I appreciate that, man. Keyshawn Davis is on the same card as well, too. Shout out to Keyshawn.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, point on point. Eric R, what's going on, my man? Good to see you, man. I didn't see you last week, man. So good to see you in here, my brother. Canelo #1. PBC top rank should have a 5 versus 5 card, just like Matchroom versus Queensberry next month. Man, I love all that 5 versus 5 stuff, bro. I love all that. I can't put guys who pop dirty at #1. So Monster and Bud got the top spot right now. I remember, bro, when I was coming up, there was a guy named Steve Messler. He's a 4-man bobsled, first American 4-man bobsled team to win an Olympic gold medal in 2012. And, this is when I was coming up, and he was kind of teaching me about how the media works. And he said, Akeem, the worst thing that an athlete, when they're coming up in the news, is if they get attached to any type of allegations. Even if it's not guilty or you're not guilty, the fact that your name is in these allegations, that's all that they're gonna see. And so for me, it's like this Ryan Garcia win. It's like it's tainted, and not just because of the fact of the Osterine, but he's actually never fought at 140. like he's either missed weight, never made weight. He's never fought at 140. So for me, it's like, bro, like, what are we doing? You know what I'm saying? Like,
One more thing just to bring up for the Garcia thing is like most of the people that watch that fight are not boxing fans. That's why it had such a big turnout. They're not boxing fans. They're not paying any attention to this PED. So I think Ryan Garcia came in overweight on purpose. He
Oh, 100%.
cheated on purpose to get that win. Like on my Facebook, I got like 2-3 friends that I could talk boxing with, but there was hundreds of them talking about the Garcia fight, and now they think Garcia is this monster and everything like that. None of them are saying anything about this positive test. They're still stuck on, like you said before, like you can't unsee what you saw. They just see Garcia as that guy. And I think he did all this on purpose, in my opinion, because in the public eye, outside of boxing, he still looks, really good.
Yeah, yeah. Man, let me ask this last question, bro, before we kind of close out. I got a jet in 7 minutes. Let me ask you this, man. What no, let me ask this. Who do you think has the most to prove this year for you personally, right? Just your thoughts in any division. Who do you think has the most to prove this year? Who needs to have a big year?
Uh, God, I mean, I would say a guy. I would say Terrence Crawford.
Okay.
And that's just because I know he's a absolutely great fighter. I want him to get the fights on his resume because I'm worried that 10 years from now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at his resume. I know all those fighters. I know Gamboa and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, I don't want the guy to retire. And when you look at all the greats that they're comparing him to, all those guys have fantastic names on their resumes. Like, I want him to get that really good name on his resume. I just don't know who it is because there's not really who's he going to fight the winner of, even if he fights Virgil Ortiz or Tim Tszyu, something like that. It's just not enough. So I don't have an answer for who it is. I just want to see him get a big name. And I would also like to see Inoue. I would like to see him move up just to get big names. He's dominating at that division, but if he moves up to, I think he can go up to 126 and fight any of those dudes up there. I would
Yeah.
love to see a fight between him and Ray Ford. I was at Ray Ford's last fight for that 12-round stoppage. I would love to see that, but I don't know. It's a tough one to call. And Anthony Joshua too. I would love to see Anthony Joshua finally get to face Fury. I've always backed Joshua in that fight. I would love for him to prove me right and finally beat Fury. That would be great.
You know what I like about Anthony Joshua, bro, is he's gonna fight as much as he can every single year. You don't have to like him, but you got to respect it, man. If he says I'm going to fight 3 times this year, he's going to fight 3 times. And that's what I like about Canelo as well, too. Canelo is going to fight. You know what I'm saying? It may not be who we want him to fight or who the world wants him to fight, but he's going to get into the ring. My man Eric R says Tank, Bud, and David Benavidez need to hit the ground running this
Tank's a good answer,
year.
too. Tank's a really good answer.
Man, I don't like this. I think this generation of boxers extremely talented, beyond belief. But man, I just wish they had a little bit of that old school, right? Where we're seeing cats fight 5, sometimes 6 times a year. I get the money has to make sense. Absolutely, get as much money as you can. I'm not in the ring. I'm never going to. And as a former athlete, I campaign for the athletes to make as much as they can while they're in the sport. But man, it's really hurting not being able to see these guys fight much, man.
A lot of people say that's because of Floyd Mayweather. He held on to his O for his whole career, and he kind of set that stage for that. But at some point, like all those guys at 135, with all those names in the top 10, how the hell have none of them fought each other before? It makes no sense. And I just think these fighters today, I blame it on the fighters. I think they're pricing themselves out of big fights. And then eventually they'll get older and maybe they'll fight somebody towards the end of their career, but they're too worried to throw it away because they're like Terrence Crawford, like, why would he have fought Spence 5 years ago or so when for 15 or 20 million when he can make 10 million to fight David Avanesian? Like, I really can't blame him for doing it, but it's just there's a lot of situations like that. But it's also boxers run the sport now, not promoters. Back in the
Oh
day,
yeah.
promoters used to run the sport. And so I blame a lot of it on the boxers. But at the same time, like you said, they got to make their money. And I don't blame them for doing that because the boxing public forgets about a guy when they lose. Like
Oh,
Keith Thurman, as
do
soon as
they
he won,
ever?
that dude was done. I don't think of him that way, but that's the way the majority of the people do. Ryan Garcia was coming up. As soon as you lose the Tank, boom, you're done. That's why we wrote him off because we saw him, quote unquote, quit during the Tank Davis fight. But you got to respect the guy for taking a fight against Tank Davis and a fight against Devin Haney.
Man, my man Pablo says the mixed styles between Venata Lopez and Inoue would be mad, or just imagine Naoya fighting a tall guy like Davino Espinosa. Man, I think as he continues to go up, there's some tough fights.
Venado is one of the best. Venado Inoue is one of the best fights to make in boxing.
Man, I have never went against Venado Lopez, even when he was the underdog against Mick Conlan. I know his style is crazy. I know it's unorthodox, but man, sometimes there's always exceptions to the rules, and he's an exception to a lot of rules.
Yep.
But going back to the question, man, for me, I think Shakur Stevenson needs to have a big year. Coming off of his last fight against Dos Santos, and seeing what I think he thought one thing, and then when he got on Twitter, right, and he probably typed in the hashtag and he saw what everybody was saying, I think that got to him, and he made him question that victory, right? And I think he needs to have a big year. For as much as he talks on social, as much as he says on socials, you need to have a big year. And I think he kind of forgot that, man, boxing is a prize fighting sport, brother. If you're not going to be exciting, we don't want to see that, right? And I think I've on the channel, you've probably seen, I've talked very high of Shakur Stevenson. I think he's one of the most skillful fighters in the sport of boxing today. But if you are calling other people's fights boring and you are critical of other fighters like that, then man, we got to hold you the same standard that you're trying to do. So we need to see a big year from Shakur Stevenson, an exciting year from Shakur Stevenson. And I hope he makes a statement out of Haratunian and stops him.
Yeah, I got a different viewpoint on Shakur Stevenson. Just my whole thing, I said it in your last week's podcast. I just said, like, I never blame boring fights on the winner. Just because, like, it's up to that other guy to make the fight. One guy's just doing nothing but winning the fight. Yes, he's not exciting. If that other guy wants to make it exciting, he can go get knocked out by Shakur Stevenson. He can take more risk and go get knocked out by Shakur, but he's not doing that. So, like, I blame boring fights on the loser because you clearly didn't go all out. You went into survival mode because you realized very early you can't beat Shakur. But I completely get, like, your side of it. I just personally, like, for me, it's just a keep winning thing. Just keep winning, and then eventually, when you go up to fight like a Tank Davis, you're gonna have to do something because that stuff against De Los Santos, that ain't gonna work against Tank. But what if he beats Tank, doing the same thing that he did to De Los Santos? Like, are people gonna hold him against being a boring fighter? Just because of that, like, for me, it's just win, baby, like Al Davis. Just win.
Yeah. I'm just as critical with Dos Santos as I am with Shakur, because he kept saying, "Oh, he's running and this and that." But I'm like, "Yo, go get him." You know what I'm saying? So
Just go across the ring, see how that works out.
Inoue versus Figueroa 126. That's a great fight, man. Figueroa is a problem for anybody, man. That style, that in your face, it's a long night. Shakur needs to stay off social media, the responding portion, and only use it as bullet board material and put that passion into his craft. I hear you on that, man. I hear you on that. There are so many names in 126: Komatov, Nick Ball, Ray Vargas, Bruce Carrington, Shoo, Robezi, Brandon Figueroa, Venata Lopez, Davino Espinosa. Man, Shoo wants that Inoue fight. I don't think he should take it. I I gave him 2-3 more fights, and I think he's ready for that, man. I really like Shushu. Ray Ford, yeah, he's a problem too. Nick Ball will defeat Ray Ford next month. I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that, but I can understand why you might think that. I don't know. I think personally, I think Nick Ball had a better shot against Ray Vargas than he does against Ray Ford, in my opinion. What do you think about that, man? Am I far off in saying that, or what do you think?
No, I mean, I'm kind of biased towards Ray Ford. Like, I was at his last fight, like that whole scene. I met him after the fight. Like, I've always been high on Ray Ford, even when he was fighting out in the UK on those matchroom cards and stuff. So I'm just a Ray Ford guy, and but I love Nick Ball. It's just like you said, like Vargas was an easier target. Vargas is there.
Yeah.
He's fighting a guy with boxing skill, but the guy comes forward. It's just I think Nick Ball's only path to victory is a knockout, and I don't think he's going to be able to knock Ray Ford out. So I always just think, who's the first guy to get to 7 rounds? And I think it's Ray Ford. But the odds are very close. He's only a 2-1 favorite against Nick Ball.
I picked Ball also. Man, before we finish up, man, if anybody else has any thoughts on what we discussed today, please let us know before we finish up, man. I know you're making some wicked picks each and every single week, man. You got to give us, I'm not a betting man myself, but you got to give us some of the bets that you are making, some of the stuff that you would advise that look good, because more times than not, like, you tell me what the odds are more times than not.
I bet at least 20 to 30 boxing fights a week, at least. And I'm just a degenerate gambler for sports. But my style is picking heavy favorites and just parlaying them all together. I don't like taking long shots. There's a whole like probability versus statistics things in gambling. And like if you take 10-1 favorites and just throw them on all on a parlay, when you win the first 9, that 10th one doesn't know that the other favorite, like it doesn't take into account that all the other ones won, so now it's due for a loss. Everything, it restarts at every fight. So my strategy is just betting heavy favorites. I take 50-1 favorites. Richard Torres will be on one of my parlays this weekend. I just take big favorites to drop down the odds. So like this weekend, I took a bunch of big favorites, and then I just parlayed them with I picked Usyk against Fury. So it helped me get Usyk at like a 4-1 underdog, because I parlayed him with Jayo Pataya and Richard Torres and all these other fighters. So that's what I do. I do it every single weekend, 20 to 30 fights. Even those pro box cards on Wednesdays, I love those cards.
And they're good fights.
They're great fights. They're very hard to bet, because I like betting the heavy favorites, like 10-1 and over. I'll take it all day. I see it as kind of like free money. Sometimes stuff happens. I lost on a 40-1 favorite when Warrington lost to Mauricio Lara. He was 40-1 on my website, and I lost with him. But it happens. But just pick whoever you think's gonna win. I don't like people who bet by value. Whoever you think's gonna win, bet them. And then when I think I like somebody, I go and watch your video and see who you like, and that'll kind of cement my pick. Dude, I've been watching everybody on YouTube. You're the first one I go to when I have.
I appreciate that, bro.
I have a pick that I think is strong. Let me see what Akeem says just to make sure.
That means a lot, bro. I appreciate it, man. I try to go in unbiased, right? And again, I don't bet. The video can, help people if they do bet in some capacity, man, because we never know how a fight's going to play out until we see it. Eric R says, I blame guys calling the fight. I just had to talk to a guy about that this morning. I said dodging, parry, countering, slipping, footwork, in, not running. It's the fundamentals of defense. To hit and not get hit. Shushu versus Inoue would be filthy. Man, you put that, well, that probably happened in Japan, but I think you put that, somewhere in New York, LA, that might be crazy as well too, and be greater for Inoue to get that global type of recognition. That would be a great
Put it right
fight.
in Brooklyn. I think Shushu's from Brooklyn. Put it right in Brooklyn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ray Ford is nice, but Komotov supposedly had a torn ACL in their fight. Man,
Yeah.
I keep hearing this, bro. And as someone who been around people who tore their ACL, I just don't see him being able to do 3-minute rounds, 12 rounds. The pain would be way too much. You would not be able to move laterally. I'm not saying I just got to see the doctor results in that, man. I just find that very, very hard.
He did get
Very,
it
very
fixed
hard.
right after the fight. He did get the surgery after the fight, but I thought somebody said he tore it during the fight.
Oh, I thought it was
And,
like a MCL, PCL, like those things you can endure, but a torn ACL, I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Bet wisely, guys. Don't bet off emotion. Hmm.
Bet with your head, not your heart.
People watch Rocky movies and want to glorify guys who haven't worked hard enough on their craft and reward Rock'em Sock'em. I say don't discredit good fighters. All fighters should be appreciated 1000%, man. That's why I try to not talk. I try to tell the positives about both fighters, and I try to give their flaws in a respectful way, and not attacking them because, man, it's a lonely place in the ring, man. It's a lonely place in the ring. Okay, you should add the betting element to your videos, man. I think it's better for others to, like you, my brother, to come in and say, because I'm not, I don't bet, and I never really know the odds. So maybe we'll see what happens moving forward, man. I will bet my I will bet my kingdom on Morel.
Yeah, God, yeah.
Pablo is a big David Morel fan, so I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised
I
at
heard
that.
him last week talking about him. I agree with him. I agree with him. I
Morel,
love David. Oh,
Morel is a beast, man. Oh, absolutely. I love Bruce Carrington, but like Frank Martin, he needs to fight champions and former Olympians before he fight a guy like the Monster. Yeah, man. There's been a lot of people saying, man, they should fight next. And I'm just like, no, they should not fight next. Give Shushu a couple more years, 2 or 3 more years. But then, in a way, is getting a little bit older as well, too. Who knows where he will end up? But yeah, I don't think Shushu is ready
I
for that right
honestly
now.
think Shushu's the second best guy in that division, but that's not fair to him to have to rush himself just because there's nobody else there.
Yeah. Trains with the Russian. I wouldn't put money there. Well, man, we'll see. We'll
Bet
see.
him in his last fight, that Kradovic guy. He fought on like a pro box card or somewhere in Plant City, Florida, or something like that. He
Is that
looked
the guy
all
they
right,
call?
but
Is that Hot Rod? Is his nickname Hot Rod?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he
Okay.
ain't special like Morel is. I mean, I think he'll get knocked out in 2 or 3 rounds, I think.
Man, let me ask you this, man. Real quick. David Benavidez going up to 175. What are your thoughts on that, man? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think he's in a tougher fight than he might think? Because Vosdick, a lot of people think that Vosdick could beat him. Famously, Teddy Atlas said it as well too. He's a respected trainer, but Teddy Atlas used to train Vosdick. So,
I know.
what do you think about that, man?
Actually, one of my gloves back here, I got Godsvick and Teddy Atlas on my glove. I met him a few
Man,
years ago at Boxing Hall of Fame.
excellent setup in the background, my brother. I meant to say that.
Yeah, I live 15 minutes away from the Boxing Hall of Fame, so I'm always there on the
Wow.
Boxing Hall of Fame week and stuff like that. But I liked Godsvick before the Better BF fight. He was very special, but he had a problem with his brain or something like that when he took a couple of years off.
Oh,
And
wow.
he has had a fight since, but I mean, the guy, like, I think he almost died or something like that. Like, I can't pick him to even come close. I think they're saying that because Benavidez is like his only chance to lose is he can get outboxed, but
Mhm.
man, I just don't see anybody stopping stopping that pressure that Benavidez brings. He's a very underrated, like he's a smart fighter. And I don't think Godsvick could be able to stay away from him for 12 rounds. I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to pot shot him for 12 rounds and be able to stay away without Benavidez getting to him. It might be something where Godsvick is up on the cards when he gets knocked out, but I just don't see, I would put that fight at like Benavidez probably like 10-1 odds or something like that. And I would take Benavidez.
Man,
but I get what they're
Benavidez,
saying about Godsvick because he was thought to be, for a while, they had him ranked over Bivol when it was
yeah.
him, Bivol, and Beterbiev who had the titles. But I just can't pick him. I forget who he looked real bad against. I think it was that hard puncher from Canada, but I can't pick Godsvick.
David Lemieux. David
Oh,
Lemieux, I think it was.
like
Beterbiev?
No, it was like, or maybe he didn't fight, but was it like Adonis Stevenson or something like that?
Eric
I don't
R's
know.
got us. Adonis Stevenson. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I think he's the one who hurt Godsvick really bad, and then Godsvick had to go get that brain surgery, if my mind's right. But it's
Jeez.
just something I got with Godsvick. Those guys coming back from injuries, they could do good. It's just when you're at the top level, you're not gonna beat a guy like Benavidez. I don't think.
And I think Benavidez, man, he could be a cruiserweight. He could go to heavyweight. Like I think at 168, he maybe limits himself a little bit, but I think at 175, man, I'm
I think
expecting a
he'll be
dominant
better at
performance. Yeah,
175.
I think so
He's got
too. He
the
won't have
body
to.
type, big, tall body type. He can put weight on pretty easily, I would imagine. And then the speed will always be, he'll be faster at, 175 for the guys. And there's not a lot of good fighters at 175. There's the top
Yeah.
two, and that's it.
Question for you right here, man. Who do you have your money on, Fury, Usyk? I think you answered that a little bit earlier.
Yeah. I lean towards Usyk, but I'll tell you just said not to let emotions get in the way. I've always thought Usyk over Fury, so I'm kind of just sticking to my guns. But if Fury could dominate him, I mean, I could see it. It's just I've always said Fury, and it's because I don't think Fury has the footwork anymore. So I think Usyk can just land 2-3 clean punches around and win those rounds, get to 7 rounds, and I think he can win.
My man Eric R says Godsvick retired Adonis Stevenson with the brain injury.
Oh, all right. I was a little off on that. Sorry.
Man. But man, look, man, I appreciate your time, brother. Thank you for taking the time to tune in, man. And all that you shared really means a lot, man. Again, always appreciative, and thank you for taking the time to share, brother. You're welcome on the show anytime, man.
Yeah, I try to be here every week, so yeah, I'll hop on whenever you need somebody.
You my man, bro. Appreciate you, man. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Hakeem.
Man, shout out to everybody, man, that has taken the time to tune in, man. I appreciate each of you. Again, we will be back on Monday. Special guest in the house on Monday. My man Morgan Campbell is going to be joining us. You probably, if you've watched any of the Friday fights, all of the Canadian fights, you probably heard his voice, man. He is award-winning journalist. He does all of the Canadian fights, all the Better BF fights. You've definitely heard his voice before. He's a writer for New York Times. He does boxing, he does track and field. I think you guys are really going to love his perspective on things. So he's going to join me next week, Monday. And if you have some time on your schedule, I will also be back on Bleacher Report on, the name is slipping me. I want to say Thursday, doing a little segment for them on Tyson Fury and Usyk. I'll put that in the community section as well too. But man, appreciate each of you. You know, it's always love and respect, man. I got a lot of appreciation for everybody. Have a great rest of your day and week. And next week, man, we're going to be talking about the new undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And I'm sure we're going to have some controversy. At least one of those fights is not going to go probably how we thought it will. But I appreciate each of you. Much love. We'll talk next time. Have a good rest of your week. God bless.